In the realm of Greek mythology, there existed a young man whose beauty was renowned throughout the land. Narcissus was born to Cephissus, a river god, and the nymph Liriope. Theseus, a renowned blind prophet in Greek mythology, played a pivotal role in this narrative by foretelling Narcissus's destiny. Tiresias possessed the gift of foresight and had the ability to communicate with the gods. One day, he gave some insight into the child's future. Tiresias, in his wisdom, consulted the gods and received a vision of Narcissus's fate. He then delivered the prophecy, which would ultimately shape the tragic story of Narcissus. The prophecy foretold that Narcissus would live a long life, as long as he never came to know himself. This cryptic prophecy left the parent puzzled, as it seemed impossible to interpret its true meaning. However, as time passed, the meaning of Tiresias's words became tragically clear. From the moment he took his first breath, it was evident that he was not an ordinary child. His beauty was otherworldly, surpassing that of any mortal or deity. His golden hair cascaded like a waterfall. His skin was as fair as alabaster, and his eyes, a piercing shade of blue, seemed to hold the very essence of the heavens. As Narcissus grew into adolescence, his beauty only intensified. Despite the numerous admirers who sought his affections, Narcissus remained indifferent to their advances. Among those who fell hopelessly in love with Narcissus was Amenias, a young man of great character and gentleness. Amenias had admired Narcissus from afar, captivated by his beauty, but he had never mustered the courage to confess his feelings. Eventually, driven by the intensity of his love, Amenias decided to declare his affection to Narcissus, hoping for a reciprocation that would bring them together. Amenias approached Narcissus with a heart full of hope, his words trembling with nervousness as he confessed his love. But Narcissus, ever the indifferent youth, turned a cold shoulder to Amenias's declaration. He rejected Amenias with a haughty and disdainful attitude, dismissing his love as though it were of no consequence. Heartbroken and devastated by Narcissus's rejection, Amenias retreated in despair. The pain of unrequited love weighed heavily on his soul, and he could not bear the agony of loving someone who would not love him in return. In his anguish, Amenias prayed to the gods for a just resolution to his suffering, invoking the divine to make Narcissus understand the pain he had inflicted upon others. Nemesis, goddess of revenge and retribution, moved by Amenias' plea for justice, decided to intervene. She chose to teach Narcissus a lesson he would never forget. One day, while wandering through the lush woods that surrounded his home, Narcissus encountered a group of woodland nymphs. Among them was Echo, a nymph known for her enchanting voice. Echo was not just any nymph. She had a unique curse placed upon her by the goddess Hera. Echo could only repeat the last words spoken to her, making it impossible for her to initiate a conversation or express her own thoughts. When Echo saw Narcissus, she was immediately captivated by his beauty. She followed him through the woods, watching from the shadows and longing to speak with him. Eventually, Narcissus became aware of her presence and called out, "Who's there?" Echo, unable to initiate conversation, could only repeat his words, "Who's there?" Narcissus, puzzled by this response, called out again, "Come here! Come here!" echoed Echo. Frustrated and unaware of Echo's curse, Narcissus shouted, "Leave me alone! Leave me alone!" Echoed Echo, tears welling up in her eyes. Narcissus, convinced that he was being mocked, turned and walked away, leaving Echo heartbroken. She spent her days in the woods, pining for Narcissus, her voice reduced to a mere reflection of his words. Nemesis saw the arrogance in Narcissus's behavior. She believed that he needed to learn a lesson about the consequences of his callousness. Nemesis devised a plan to humble Narcissus. She led him to a crystal-clear pool deep within the forest, a pool so pristine that it seemed like a mirror reflecting the heavens above. As Narcissus approached the pool, he noticed his own reflection for the first time. Mesmerized by the image staring back at him, he leaned closer and closer until he was gazing deeply into his own eyes. Narcissus was struck by the breathtaking beauty of the image before him. He was captivated by the vision of himself, unable to tear his eyes away from his own reflection. As he gazed at his own image, a deep and all-consuming love welled up within him. He fell deeply in love with himself, unable to comprehend the image was, in fact, his own reflection. Day after day, Narcissus remained by the pool, pining for the beautiful youth he saw in the water. He refused to eat or drink, so consumed was he by his love for his own reflection. His once golden hair grew tangled and unkempt, his skin became pallid, and his once bright eyes dulled with obsession. The nymphs and woodlands creatures watched in sorrow as Narcissus wasted away by the pool. He could hear only the echo of his own voice and see only the image of his beloved in the water. He withered away by the pool, his love for himself consuming him until there was nothing left but a pale and fragile figure. His beauty, once so renowned, had faded, and he died a lonely death, still gazing at his own reflection. The gods, moved by the tragic fate of Narcissus, transformed his body into a beautiful flower that would forever bear his name, the Narcissus flower.
Thanks for watching. Subscribe to get more content like this.